We have got a great panel today. Tia Mitchell, Washington correspondent for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Amy Walter, editor-in-chief and publisher of the Cook Political Report. Former New York Democratic Congressman Joe Crowley and Republican strategist Brad Todd. Brad, your lucky day. I'm going to start with you. What is your reaction? This is Trump's vice president, who says he's not going to endorse him. It's not necessarily a surprise, but again, it comes after all of these other Republicans who are critical of Trump on January 6th have endorsed him, not Mike Pence.
You know, I think we now can await Dan Quayle's, Dick Cheney's endorsements and other vice presidents. You know, I don't think anybody is waiting with bated breath on Mike Pence's opinion. Mike Pence ran in the Republican primary. He made his case. It didn't resonate. And, you know, Mike Pence is a good man, and I think most Republicans respect him, but I don't think they're looking to him to pick their nominee at this juncture. I think he's made his case.
Amy, do you think that that is the case, or could this have an impact for moderates, for independents, for those all-important suburban voters who Trump's going to need if he wants to win the White House?
Right. I think they have made their decision, and in fact, just in looking at polling over these last few weeks, you're not really seeing those voters suddenly moving over to Donald Trump. I think they've decided that they're decidedly anti-Trump. The most interesting thing about that interview, though, was he did not then choose to say something which I think would be a powerful thing, which is to say, I'm not endorsing him, and I don't think that Republicans should support him, which he would not do. So he's also making this sort of similar excuse that you hear from other Republicans, which is kind of good for Trump, which is the whole, well, I agree on a lot of these things, but on issues we differ. He didn't make the case that what we differ on is just the worry that I have for what he would do as president.
Yeah, it's a great point, Amy. Tia, what do you make of this? And again, we are still waiting to see what happens with no labels. They say they are going to run a third-party candidate. Here you have Mike Pence saying, I'm not endorsing Trump. It raises questions about who they might be considering courting. I'm told they're reaching out to a lot of people right now.
Yeah, we hear that, and I think they wouldn't mind a Mike Pence on their no labels ticket.
Wouldn't.
I think it's interesting because what we've seen other prominent Republicans do is kind of fall in line, not necessarily endorsing Trump, but saying, if he's our party nominee, let the will of the voters be done. We'll get behind him if he's the nominee. Again, they're falling in line, and he's choosing, again, not necessarily to go as far as to say, don't vote for Trump, but he's saying, I won't be endorsing Trump. I won't be falling in line the way other Republicans have. And so I do think it is surprising, and it does make me wonder, is he open to that possible third-party ticket?
Yeah, it makes me wonder that as well. Joe Crowley, what is your reaction to what you just heard from former Vice President Mike Pence, and how concerned are Democrats right now about the fact that No Labels has come out and said, yes, they are going to run a third-party candidate?
Well, No Labels is a label. Let's be clear about that. The thing that despise, they've become. So let's keep that in mind. You know, I ran into Mike a few weeks ago in a local restaurant here in D.C. and went up to him and had a nice conversation. And I've always gotten along with Mike. And I think most Democrats will say to you that he's a decent guy. Why would you support the guy that encouraged a mob to hang you? I'm not totally shocked.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think Amy's right. I think he could have gone a step further, especially if he's going to run against him and say Republicans shouldn't vote for this man.
Yeah.
You know, he's not qualified.
Well,
and he didn't do that.
Let's talk about the backdrop against which we are having this conversation, which is this very dramatic day in Fulton County, Tia. And you have Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor, stepping aside after this judgment by the judge there saying that Fani Willis can stay on the case if Nathan Wade steps aside. Politically speaking for Trump, look, you can argue it's a legal win for Fani Willis, but politically speaking for Donald Trump, is this a win as well? The case gets delayed, and he gets to continue to make his big argument, which is that there's something untoward about all of these cases.
I think the delays are a win. this case and others, the longer he can stretch them out, because we know these cases are kind of part of his campaign strategy, quite frankly. So the more they linger, and the more that there isn't any evidence actually being discussed in these sideshows like the Nathan Wade and Fani Willis relationship, I think they do play well for President Trump. I think that's one of the reasons why you'll see the district attorney's office working really hard to move forward, move past this, which is why Nathan Wade has quickly resigned from the case.
Yeah, I think you're right. Brad, what do you make of what we saw today? And again, this comes against the backdrop of, if you look at some of the polling in key battleground states, Trump is actually ahead within the margin of error over President Biden. But of course, he's got what a lot of people see as a vulnerability in some of these states, which is moderates, independents, not really turning out for him in these early primary states.
Well, he's currently ahead in every target state, every swing state in the presidential battleground. This week, there is a poll out that shows Donald Trump ahead. And again, it's mostly close, but those states are going to be close. And I think Democrats are going to have to resign themselves to the fact that there's no legal magic bullet that's going to beat Donald Trump. They're going to have to beat him in the election. They have to beat him on the campaign trail. And I think Democrats have sort of held their hopes up. They sort of thought, well, impeachment will get him. Oh, Mueller will get him. And in the end, he won in 2016. They beat him in 2020 at the ballot box. They have to beat him again.
Yeah, and I wasn't convinced, those numbers up there, well, if he's convicted, maybe I'll vote differently. Asking voters about something hypothetical is really dangerous, right? Nobody knows how they're going to feel until that moment actually happens. I think the other thing beyond it, whether he would be convicted or not, was just the split screen, I think, is what Democrats were hoping for, which is instead of talking and keeping the focus on what's going on with President Biden, what's going on the border, what's happening with inflation, the media focus is, oh, here's Trump in court again. Oh, here's Trump in court again. That was a nice split screen for the administration that they're not likely to get. Maybe it will be later this summer, but I don't know.
But Trump is like either the most luckiest person in the world, or it's proof that if you have wealth, you can just do about anything and get away with it. It's also a combination of things. Put aside the politics for a moment. These are like the prosecutors who couldn't prosecute straight. And I mean, it's happening in New York to some degree. These are unforced errors. And that's what I think is disturbing to many people who look at this, who are hoping that there'd be some adjudication within these criminal courts before the election so they can make a proper determination as to whether they should support this man or not. And that seems to be falling away.
Well, and it's not just the presidential race. We're obviously watching some of these Senate races, down-ballot races across the country, including in Ohio, where Bernie Moreno, the Trump-backed candidate, told my NBC News colleague this yesterday. Let's take a look.
This is the final stand of the Kasich, DeWine, Dolan, Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney, Bush party in Ohio. And we're going to drive a spear right through the heart of it. We're going to make certain that the America First Party, the Republican Party, the new Republican Party that cares for working class Americans, that isn't kowtowing to the elites, that cares about voters in the base, is the party that represents Ohio and Washington, D.C.
Brad, it's a little bit like what we're seeing with Mike Pence. He's basically trying to argue that the establishment, the Republican establishment, is no longer relevant, that this is Trump's party now.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting about Bernie Moreno is Donald Trump has endorsed him, and Chuck Schumer is spending money to also help him win.
Well, that was my next point.
So I think that tells you that Democrats think he's the weakest candidate. But also, Donald Trump's going to win Ohio by 10 points. He won about 8 last time. He's going to do better this time. Sherrod Brown's probably not going to run 10 points ahead of Joe Biden. No one has done that in a Senate race in the last 6 or 8 years. So I think this Ohio primary is interesting, but only mildly so.
Can you pick up on that point, Joe? Is there anything unethical, do you find, about Democrats propping him up? We get the politics of it. They see him as a weak candidate, but they also say he's a threat to democracy. So
I mean, everyone uses the tools that are at their disposal. I mean, you saw it happen in California, the dispute in the primary in terms of the Senate race there.
The Schiff race.
At the end of the day, ethically, morally, maybe not so cool, but at the end of the day, it's all about winning. And it's win or nothing. That's what it comes down to. So,
Amy, final point there.
Well, I agree with the point about Ohio. Sort of regardless who comes in, it's still a tough race for Democrats to hold on to. But it will tell us what kind of Senate majority, if Republicans are in the majority, that class that started in 2016 and 2020, the Senate looks already very, very different from the one that Donald Trump entered in 2017.
It sure does. All right, great conversation for a Friday. Thank you all. Appreciate it, Tia, Amy, and Joe. Hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.